and then have to walk out the whole class.
Today is Chaf Gimel Kislev Tashin Ayin. This is Shir Kali from Parshas Vayeishev.
All right, so contrary to our usual practice, we're turning right to the end of the Parsha Vayeishev. Usually we start off relatively near the beginning, taking a slight chance in the matter that maybe you guys are not familiar with this portion because you haven't learned it yet in the Chittas, but we'll take a chance on that. Right at the end of the Parsha, we find Yosef Tzaddik in the base Hasoyah, where Potiphar had him put in because of the accusation against him when it get to Ashes Potiphar. And so he was 10 years altogether in the jail. It's a heck of a long time. He rose to a certain tremendously high position, albeit when he was in the jail. What's your phone?
I got a Shmos celebrations.
Huh?
I accidentally took a Shmos celebrations.
There's no Chumash around anyway. And he gained a high position, albeit in the jail, Yosef Tzaddik. And then it occurred that Pare became angry with two of his leading servants. One was the Sar HaMashkim, and the other was the Sar HaOifim, the Sar HaMashkim, the minister or the man in charge of the drinks. And the Sar HaOifim was the leading baker, who was used to do all the baking for Pare. And Rashi tells us rather amazingly that in each of these people's service that they put in front of Pare found a fly. He found a fly in the wine, and he got very angry with the Sar HaMashkim. And something similar, he cut open a royal cake, and he found in it also some creeping creature like a fly or something crazy was there. And that's why he put them in prison. We see that the whole thing was an amazing hashgacha prati, is that these guys had to be put into prison by Pare. And once they were in prison, they formed also a connection with Yosef, because he was like in charge of them. And each of them had dreams, as you may be familiar with the story. And Sar HaMashkim had a dream about wine, about giving wine to Pare to drink. That was his normal job. And the Sar HaOifim, he had a dream about 3 baskets on his head, and the birds coming to eat from the upper basket, eating the bread. And Yosef interpreted their dreams. And he said that the Sar HaMashkim's dream indicates that he's going to be put back in his position, that in another 3 days Pare is going to put him back into his job and will reinstate him honorably back into his position. Sar HaOifim, Yosef foretold it's going to be hung up by Pare. He's going to remain angry with him and hang him up. And that's in effect what happened. In another 3 days, that's B'diuk what happened. Yosef then turns to the Sar HaMashkim, even before the dream becomes true. Yosef is so clear and positive that the dream is going to become true, that he turns to the Sar HaMashkim and he says that when Pare will do good with you, when he will reinstate you and put you back into your full position, then you must remember me to Pare. And you must speak good about me in front of Pare, and he will then take me out, and that'll be a reason and a way for me to be released. And Yosef backs himself up by saying that he was innocent, and originally when he came into Mitzrayim Beklal, he was also stolen and cast away. He was not guilty of any particular inyan, and to be put here in the jail, he was also not guilty of any avera or crime or anything which was improper, so you must mention me to Pare. That's what he said to the Tsar Hamashkim, even before the dream actually became true. And once it becomes true, you find that the posik in the last posik in the whole parsha, it tells us V'lo yizocha, the last chapter Mem, posik of Gimel, V'lo yizocha Sar Hamashkim es Yosef Vayishkochehu. The minister for the drinks did not remember Yosef, Vayishkochehu, and he forgot him. So the intelligent readers immediately attracted by the double expression that he didn't remember him and he forgot him. But l'chera, it's the same thing. If I don't remember somebody, then I forgot him. Secondly is, what does that really need to be mentioned? It could have just been said later in the next parsha, when Pari has his dreams, and in the meantime the Tsar Hamashkim never said anything, but once Pari dreamed the dreams, and all of a sudden the Tsar Hamashkim remembered. Why does it have to be written here at the end of this parsha, before it really gains any real significance, that the Tsar Hamashkim forgot Yosef, or rather he didn't remember him and he forgot him? So comes along Rashi, and Rashi says to us the following thing: V'lo yizocha Sar Hamashkim boiba. Even on that very day, when Yosef told him, a few hours later, he already not clear in his memory anymore. Didn't remember it. Vayishkochehu li'acham mikan, and he forgot him afterwards. Meaning, when he got back into the court of Pare, and he should have been carrying out the shlichus, then he forgot him. So obviously Rashi is concerned with what we pointed out earlier, the doubling up of the expression, that he didn't remember and he forgot. So Rashi says that not to remember is a more immediate idea. That you told somebody and he didn't remember means that he sort of didn't pay attention to it with all the depth that you expected of him, but that's more or less at the same time that you spoke to him, or immediately after. However, to forget means a more powerful thing, that you forget completely the significance of the whole request that was made to you. So he said, that's li'achami, and that's in a later point, that the Tsar Hamashkim forgot all about it. So we see that Rashi's answering that question of the double lashon, that it's referring to two different stages or periods in time. The one can be more immediate. The idea of forgetfulness is a more long-term matter, and there it passes out of a person's mind, we could suggest altogether. So maybe there's a hint that lo yizocha is less complete or less massive than Vayishkochehu, because the Ishkochehu is after, it's more in time, so it's possible for a person to have drifted into a deeper forgetfulness than immediately after he heard it. That's one thing. Then Rashi says, Mipnei shetola bo Yosef lezochrei, since Yosef depended in him, literally made himself dependent in the Tsar Hamashkim to remember him, whose kach liyos osur shtei shonim. Yosef had to remain locked up in the jail an extra 2 years. I mean, he'd already been there 10 years, as it was. And now he got another 2 years added onto his sentence. Now that's a pretty heavy going. I mean, because Yosef made himself, and he asked, and he requested, and he made, as it were, a factor in the situation out of the Tsar Hamashkim, and that means he depended himself on him. He hung himself on the Tsar Hamashkim, and therefore he had to stay another 2 years in the jail. Or, to say it more exactly, he got a 2 years punishment for that. In other words, he got an extra 2 years jail, or he got 2 years jail just for that itself, for having depended himself in the Tsar Amashkim. In other words, this was a 2 years jail from the Eivish's court, not from Parai. Shenema, how do we know that? Or what indicates to us, why on earth should we do that to Vayeishev, give him another 2 years, just because he spoke with the Sarah Amashkim? So it says, Rashi, Shenema, Ashrei HaGever, Asher Som Hashem Mivtachoi. Happy or voyal is the man that he places Hashem his trust. He makes Hashem his trustedness. And he doesn't turn El Rahovim. He doesn't turn to people that hold themselves very big and hold themselves to be, in Yiddish, Gresa Machers. That's what Rahovim are. People think, that they're running the show, they're very important, and you have to be dependent in them. It also implies the idea of folly, all those types of things which come from Aiva, which is a folly of very high sort, as well known. However, happy is a man who relies only on Hashem, and he doesn't turn to the proud and the foolish, which are the Rahovim. So it says Rashi, what does that mean? And he said that what it means is that happy is the man that he doesn't place his trust on people like the Mitzrayim, what they are called Rahav. Now, it's interesting that Rashi doesn't say that they're Kruim Rahavim, like the Pasuk says, wasn't Rabim. He just says in the single that the Mitzrayim, or maybe he's referring to the whole state of Mitzrayim, just the whole country, but he says it in the plural verb, Hakruim, which are called Rahav. In other words, the whole Mitzrayim is called, foolish and folly-stricken, proud and baligayvas, how do you call it? They trust in their own power. Happy is the man that doesn't turn to them. So that's applying to Yosef. That's what he said. He's applying that to Yosef. Yosef would have been happy had he not placed himself and put his trust in a Rahav like the Sarah Amashkim. And so what did the Sarah Amashkim do? He just put Yosef in his his immediate little notebook of his memory, and then he just comfortably forgot all about him, and would never have imagined to remember him had it not been for the whole Maisa, which happened later when Pare had a dream. As we see, that dreams play a very significant part in this whole Inyan, beginning with this week's Parsha and the beginning of next week's Parsha. We see the tremendous significance of dreams. However, we're not going into that at the moment. So suffice it to say that Rashi adds a second nakuda, and that is, why was Yosef obliged to sit another 2 years in jail if Hashem had already sent him somebody that could have got him out with absolute ease? Because this guy was Sarah Mashkim, he was a leading man by Pare, and he'd won back Pare's favor for some mysterious reason. We don't know why Pare wanted his favor back, but the other fellow, he hung him up, So it's a moment where everything should have straightened out. Sarah Mashkim should have mentioned to Pare, and everything would have been all right, wouldn't it? He would have got out, wouldn't he? Yeah? But it didn't work that way. So Rashi says, why? Favuit. And he said, because Yosef had a serious error, what you might call a moral error, in that he placed his trust in a person like the Sarah Mashkim. What he is a Rahav. He's one of these part of a nation which are called Rahovim or Rahov. And by doing that, he was guilty of losing his betochin, or how do you call it, staining his betochin in Hashem, and therefore he had to get 2 years. He got 2 years for that. Yes. He was punished for 2 years, as he got 2 years imprisonment for having done that. So we see that Rashi is concerned with two nakudas. Aleph, by the doubling of the Lashon in the Pasuk, and secondly is that we see that this Pasuk must have some significance in the whole story. What is its significance? Like we said, what's it doing here? It's telling us why the next pasuk and the next psukim make good sense. Why is it written that after 2 years, then only does Yosef get let out by Pari? So Rashi tells us why. So we've got to examine these two, as it were, nakudas, and we've got to see what is the connection between them. And Aleph, what does it mean that there are two inyanim, one to not to remember and afterwards to forget? And what does it mean that Yosef was forbidden to take that opportunity? He should not have taken that opportunity. So ask yourself the question, maybe if we ask the second question that Rashi was dealing with first, then that'll help us along to understand the whole issue. What was wrong with Yosef saying to the Sara Mashkim, you're getting out, you're going to be standing in front of Pari pouring out his wine, mention me to him, tell Pari about me. It's a few sentences, and Pari being a king, and you can say that I'm a very capable man, I've been in charge of the whole Beit Zohar, I'm sure that that'll be a good reason for Pari to let me out, or at least see me in a favorable light, and bring the other people in charge of the jail that get me out. Now, normally speaking, for a person to take an opportunity of that nature seems perfectly justifiable al pi Torah. And that is that we have a cloud that Yivorechach Hashem b'chol asher ta'aseh. The Eibishter's blessing in our lives always rests when we do something. But if we just sit around and wait for the Eibishter to do anything, then he doesn't necessarily send his bracha. On the contrary, that's not the way he wants it. So Yosef was right. Why is that considered a fault in his bitochen? He saw a very leading member at the what you might call the Egyptian court, and he took the opportunity to make that what you might call a gorem in teva, a factor in teva that would help him gain his release. And that's not a stira to bitochen in Hashem. It's perfectly justifiable al pi Torah that we look for some sort of a basic, what you might call sibah. And here we had a good opportunity of a leading man. However, Rashi says that Yosef got 2 years for it, and if we just look straightforward in the Lashon of Rashi seems to say there are like two nuances here. One is that he was pono, he turned to somebody, but he didn't turn stam, he turned to a person who belongs to a nation that the whole nation seems to be called Rehovim, unreliable and unprincipled peoples. The whole Mitzrayim is called one Rahav, it's one big, lot of Fadreta, Gaivedike mention. So that would tend to indicate that maybe the Etzem Pono itself, Einachanami, wasn't so bad. But he was Pono to a Russian, to somebody that belongs to a nation that basically they are people that their whole way of running the world is Hepech in Amunas Hashem and belief in the Hashgacha, the Eibishter, no, they believe that they're running the world. And they're also Mishum Zeh, they're Rishoyim. Until we see that Mitzrayim was considered, as brought down in Medrash Chazal, the worst place in the earth at that time was considered Ervas Ha'oretz, as is well known. In the Pirchei the Rabbi, the Avos the Rab Nosson, was brought down that Mitzrayim was Ervas Ha'oretz. It was the unclean place of the whole world. So Lefizeh, maybe the Ikar problem is not that Yosef placed his trust in the Sara Mashkim, but he did it with the wrong person. You mustn't put your trust in evil an evil person. Because if you do, then you make the shliach for Hashem's bringing the bracha, you make him an evil person. So in a way, you're being mezakeh the evil. You're giving them a schus in the eyes of Hashem, that they become a medium through which good teshuas are brought for holy people or good people into the world. Well, that's a fault. But that itself is a fault. However, that would tend to imply that it was the person that he put his trust in, and some people write that way, and they write it based on the lesson of Rashi, and they write it in a rather interesting medrash, which is brought down in the Medrash Rabbah at the beginning of next week's Parsha Miketz. Over there, the Medrash refers to the fact that the Sar HaMashkim did eventually wake up, and then the Medrash says, Ashrei HaGever Asher Som Hashem Mivtachai. Happy is the man that he places Hashem his trust. That's our posik here. Zeh Yosef. Well, that's Yosef. And he doesn't turn to these evil Bali Gaiva. Since Yosef said to the Sar HaMashkim, Zochartani v'hizkartani, you must remember me, he said to him doubly, you must verily remember me, Netesef lo ishtei shonim al ma'asore, that he got 2 years extra in his jail. So everybody who looks at that medrash is quite, how do you call it, thunderstruck, that it begins by saying that who is this person that is happy because he places his whole trust in Hashem? Yosef. And then it says, but he didn't turn. Who was the one who turned to the wrong people? That was also Yosef. And therefore Yosef got 2 extra years. So I mean, you can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't say that Yosef did trust in Hashem, and he's the one who it's written about, Ashrei HaGever Asher Som Hashem Mivtachai, and then you say, but he turned to the Rehovim and he got 2 extra years. I mean, that's a heap of what you just said. That's the very opposite of what you just said. So therefore, on that basis, comes along the Moshe and other people here on the Medrash Rabbah, and they want to say, B'diuk that terror we just learned in Rashi. And they want to say, Yosef Atari was really basically doing okay with them, that he did approach, and he made some sort of an opportunity through which the divine hashgacha should go. That's perfectly all right. And therefore, Yosef HaTzadik had emes betochen in the Eibishter. And even more than that, he had so much betochen in the Eibishter that he wanted that the glory of the whole thing should be the Eibishter's, not his. In other words, he wasn't looking for his own benefit, he was also looking for Kiddush Hashem. And that we see later when Parai said to him, listen here, who are you, and this and that. Yosef kept saying the whole time, it's all the Eibishter, it's not me. And Parai said, how do you know the interpretations of the dreams and so on? And Yosef said, oh, it's not me, it's all Hashem. We see that Yosef was very into this whole idea that it was everything was the Eibishter and everything was for the sake of the Eibishter. And that's what it said. However, he was in a terrible situation in jail, and he got this amazing possibility, so he made it into a possibility. That would have been okay, but he shouldn't have chosen a Rosh. I might say, well, that's the person that was brought to him, and what's he going to do? The guy's a Rosh, but he happens to be the one that's there. So we have to say that if you see that the person that's going to be your medium is a Rosha, then you just have to conclude that that's not really an emes sivul or emes thing that Hashem would want you to use, and you just have to keep waiting. That's what we have to say according to that particular shot. Comes along another great saver is the Nefesh Yonason. That was written by Rabbi Yonason ben not Rabbi Yonason ben Uziel, the Rabbi Yonason Eibeshitz. He was a very great Achrei, probably about 400 or 500 years ago. The Rabbi Yonason Eibeshitz, he wrote several svarim on the Parshiyas and on the Haftarahs, and he was a tremendous guy. He says like this. He says that Avad the Yosef HaTzadik was Beseder. He was Mamish Beseder Gamur. Ashrei HaGever, Ashrei Yivtak B'Hashem. That's Yosef. Yosef was always perfect and adequate, restful in his trust in Hashem. And once he saw that the Eibishter brought him a situation like this, that there was a man came into the prison who has a tremendous pull with Pari, because he's going to get put back into a high position in a good mood. Everybody's going to say, oh, isn't this wonderful he's brought back. Pari's going to be pleased also that he brought him back. It's a wonderful opportunity. But up to here. In other words, Yosef should have seen that this was a wonderful opportunity and just relied on the fact that Hashem would somehow or another make the Sar HaMashkim talk out. Yosef shouldn't have actually approached him. Yosef shouldn't have put himself down, as you might say, by approaching a person like the Sar HaMashkim. But that fits into the terms of these Meforshim on the Medrash, that it's both the person he turned to and the very fact that he did turn to anybody. He should have just said, oh, here's a sibur from Hashem, that's up to here, that's what I got to do. Just to notice, and now I have to trust even more. Zicher that he's been in my control. Hashem is going to help that he'll be the one that will. In other words, he's seen that Hashem sent him, but he shouldn't have got involved personally in the matter. These are the Vayeishev Kislev. That's a little bit more a movement into a slightly higher position in the matter. That Yosef, he should have realized that this was a sibur mi'ez Hashem. Here's one of the big knobs. Paro is going to take him back into his court. He should have said, oh, up to here is what I have to know. Hashem will look after it. Hashem will for sure bring that he'll mention me to Paro. But he shouldn't have come down to him and said, listen here, I want you to mention me to Paro. And particularly that if you look in the Pasuk, he uses an expression which is very unusual, Yosef, and he says to the Sar HaMashkim, Ki'im is kautani v'zochatani ito, together with you. In other words, he put himself down, as you might say, on the same level as the Sar HaMashkim. The Paro, you should mention together with yourself me, or in other words, we should be both in the same, as it were, bracket. And just like you had a Yeshua, so I will also have. So according to certain people, that's also a letdown on the part of Yosef. You shouldn't have said itcha, with you biyachar. And therefore, according to the Rabbeinos and the Eibishitz, we've got a middle point, that he should have noticed that was a sibur that Hashem was going to help him. However, he should not have taken advantage personally of the sibur. He should have just known that will be the way, and trusted perfectly that Hashem would help him through that. We shouldn't have mixed into it. Comes on the Rabbeinu Bechai. Well, that's not according to historical reasoning. The Rabbeinu Bechai is much earlier than the Nefesh Yonason. However, the Rabbeinu Bechai takes a much more extreme position on the matter. Therefore, I'm mentioning him second or third or whatever in line. And that is that the Rabbeinu Bechai says another thing. And basically, depending on who you are, it depends who you are. People are allowed to see a sibur or a thing in life and use that as a medium to bring the divine bracha. That's fine. But it depends who you are. And a person like Yosef, who's so great, and he's so divine, and he's got so much, as it were, kesher with Hashem, and he has so much ability to be unaffected by the world. And we see he was in the most terrible situations for years, and then all of a sudden he becomes a ruler of the whole of Mitzrayim, and he still remains Yosef HaTzadik. Hello? I'll throw you out, boy. Don't play around with me like that. It's a minute. We see that Yosef was able to put up with the most impossible situations, morally speaking, and still be Yosef HaTzadik. Like we saw in the Pasha, the whole exposure to Ashes Potiphar and the whole thing, nonetheless Yosef remained absolutely firm in his righteousness and his tzidkas and his cleavage to Hashem. So the Far says that Rabbeinu Bachai, if you're somebody on Yosef HaTzaddik's level, then you have to trust in Hashem completely. And he says that you have to rely not on a siba which comes through human things, but you have to rely on Hashem as Mokir Hasibis. That the Evish says we're the source of all the reasons. You have to rely on him, that he'll put a reason together, and he'll look after you if you're on Yosef HaTzaddik's Madrega. And therefore, Yosef HaTzaddik shouldn't have done anything. He should have just trusted in Hashem. He shouldn't have put himself in a position where he became in any way batel or kosher to a sibur b'derech hateva or in human terms. And he brings an amazing raya, the Harikolim, the Rabbeinu Bachai, from Eliyahu Hanavi, when Eliyahu Hanavi was fleeing from Ochav, and Jezebel, the evil king and queen of the Shaman of the Israel, the kingdom of Israel in the Shomron, that the Eivish told him he must run away and hide in a cave. And he did. He hid inside this cave, and he didn't have anything to eat or to drink. And so the Eivish said, you'll have what to eat and drink. And Eliyahu didn't know he didn't know how possibly is he going to eat and drink. So what did he do? He drank water from the Jordan River, which happened to be flowing past. And then it's written that the Oirvim, how do you call them? The crows every day brought food to Eliyahu Hanavi. They bought him mamish food. It's even written that they bought him bossa. I suppose they get hold of that, but not that type of bossa. So there's fun in a medrash, but a medrash said, where did these crows get bossa that Eliyahu Hanavi would be able to eat it? I mean, I tell you, where did they get it? So it's written that they went to the king's table, to Ochav, and they pinched bossa from Ochav's table. Ochav was a Russian. No, he used to have kosher meat. And they bought the meat specially for Eliyahu, and the same with the bread and with the dinyanim. They got it from the very high windows, as you use the expression, and they brought it directly to Eliyahu Hanavi. And as they state in the pasuk that Eliyahu Hanavi was there for quite a while. He was hiding for a long time. He had this food from the oil of him. And so what did he do the whole day? Eliyahu Hanavi, he thought, the greatness of the Eivish Al Pi Chabad Chassidut. Upon him, he was fed and he was looked after by the crows. So it says the Rabbeinu Bachai, you just see that if you really trust in Hashem, be'emes lamita, and you believe that Hashem runs the whole world and He's the balabos over all the sibis, over all the causes in life, so then you don't have to worry. Things will just happen, and you have what you need. But as the Rabbeinu Bachai, you got to really trust. With a completeness. And Yosef HaTzadik, he was into that league. Yosef HaTzadik was the sort of person that we could demand that. We could demand that from him. And therefore, he shouldn't have turned Beklal to the Sarah. The Sarah Mashkim. And Allah's Kama that he happened to be. Arosh. And according to the Rabbeinu Bachai, it's not so much like Rashi. The Rashi says two things. That first of all, he turned to a very unpleasant and wrong type of person. He was a Rahav, and the whole country is called Rahavim. There's a big emphasis in Rashi that he wasn't the right type of person. According to the Rabbeinu Bachai, that's not so much the issue. The very fact that he turned Beklal to any issue, that is the issue. According to the Rabbeinu Bachai. Asher Lefize, kommt euch, that the Rabbeinu Bachai is touching on A'inim, which brought down in Chassidus. Is not my, it's not. I gave you guys a chance. I said, if you find this too hard, you can sit in the other room. I gave you a chance. It's, that he could have, it's put down, and you say it every Friday in the Pasach Eliyahu. You know the thing you say in the in the Pasuk Eliyahu every Friday, that you say, Antu Ilas Elois Vesibas HaSibah. You say to the Eibishter, you are literally the source point of all the derivatives, and you are the reason for all you had to go to the cause of all the causes. That's what, I don't know, that's the way I would translate it in English.
The source point of all source points.
Yeah, the source point of all source points, and, yes, you're right. Yeah, you're correct. And you are the source of all causes, or sibbates. So when the Rabbeinu B'chaya says that the Eibishter is the Mokeh Kol HaSibbates, yeah, then obviously what he means is that he, like we just said, he's the Sibbas HaSibbates. So it's brought down and considered that it's two types of betochen. The Rebbe brings it in the Iron Beis. In the Iron Beis he brings down about it. And he says two types of betochen. There's a betochen in the Eibishter being Ilas HaIlas, and that's a kosher of betochen. In other words, you trust in Hashem that He's in charge of all the source points and all the derivatives that come out from the source point, and He will make a whole series of inyanim which will fit together and it'll all be fine. But there's another type of betochen where you don't need all that, and you just go straight to Hashem, and you say you are the source of all the causes. You just make some cause. I don't know exactly how it's going to happen. Do I? I don't know how it's going to happen, but it's going to happen. Sibbas HaSibbates. That's the Rabbeinu B'chaya. Hashem is Mokeh Kol HaSibbates. Yeah, L'choira means that Sibbas HaSibbates is the point of the Rabbeinu B'chaya, and you got to be a Baal Madrega for them. If you're a Baal Madrega, then you can rely on it. And if that fits in nicely the marriage. It was a zikr that Yosef Atali was that he was always Sam Hashem Mivtachoi, but he fell down a little bit from Mish Madrega here, that he went down into Ilas HaIlas instead of remaining in Sibbas HaSibbates, and that's why he got 2 years jail. According to Rashi, not extra. That was just a special punishment, 2 years for them. So Lefizah come to us an amazing point, that some people are just able to trust in Hashem no matter what, and the Eibush will look after them. If you need it, He'll send you crows, and they will feed you. Where they get the kosher meat, they get it from the king's table himself. It's a madrega. So the emes is that Rabbeinu B'chaya is written l'chayra in the niggin of Pod of Shalom Nafshi, which is a pasuk in the niggin of Yutis Kislev. What is over there? You say Hashleich al Hashem Yehovcha. Cast on Hashem what you need. Yehovcha means what's supposed to be given to you. V'hu yichalcha lecha, and He will look after you. So it should be written V'hu yazunotcha. He will give you your sustenance. It's written Hu yichalchalecha, a double word, lichalkel. So the Frierdiker Rebbe in the Lekutei Diburim, the Frierdiker Rebbe says that word lichalkel is twice the word kli. It's like twice a kli. And he says what somebody who's holding on the madrega that David HaMelech is demanding in that pasuk, he has to say, I don't even need a kli, I don't even need a vessel for panasa. Oh, I do. You have to have some sort of panasa. The Eibush will make the kli also. In other words, yichal two klis, that the kli that you will get it from, the Eibush will make the kli for that. He'll do everything. So I've got to be careful. Next thing, all these guys will be writing home saying, okay, Mom and Dad, no more courses, no more panasa, no more protim, no more inyonim, nothing in the world. I'm just going to sit down and cry about it, and they will make the kli. I know, may taste it. But you've got to lift yourself up, and you've got to be holding by it. You've got to mamish be holding by that madrega. Says the Frierdiker Rebbe in a maimah in the year after he got out of prison. The Frierdiker Rebbe mamish in the year after he got out of prison, the Frierdiker writes a whole thing on this pasuk. Lo yizocha Sarah mashkim es Yosef vayishkocheyu, and Yosef got an extra 2 years, Friedrich Rebbe says that everybody's got to be, as it were, sometimes in his life it's demanded of him that he be like Vayeishev Kislev. Normally, in inverted commas, you've got to go a little bit like Hashem is Ilas Ha-Ilas. You've got to be a thing, you've got to be clear, you've got to make it clear. But there's certain points in life, and there's certain positions, and certain situations where you've got to rely entirely on the Eibishter, and it's absolutely no reason for you to be all fatschutschkit and concerned and worried and what's going to happen. The Eibishter will look out, the Eibishter will sicher help me, and es wird sicher sein good. Okay, a shliach doesn't always hold that way. A shliach's got to be mesuded. But anyway, you can't just come along and say, Sunday when you go, oh, sure, but maybe, it's kann sein. Man darf verlassen legamre al HaKodesh Baruch. So says the Friedrich Rebbe, well, that was Yosef HaTzadik. He should have known to rely entirely on the Eibishter. He didn't need to mix in this whole union of any ilah whatsoever. No, Yosef should have known that the Eibishter Sivas HaSibais, and like the Rabbins and Eibishter, that you already saw something was moving. You saw this guy came. Just rely that the Eibishter is going to look after. Your union is not that. You keep out of that, Yosef. So that's not your problem. The Eibishter is going to take you out of their Belishum Sofik. Afupi, well, we have to realize the awkward situation that Yosef was in. If you've already been 10 years in a prison, then it's pretty hard going. Even if you're a tzaddik like Yosef, it's not a particularly sympathetic situation. And the father is a tremendous. We're not saying that there's not a limud shchus on Yosef. That's what the Friedrich Rebbe says in a Maimon. What Rafi said, we see that the union of trusting in Hashem is a very tremendous aveda, and that's the union of just giving yourself away, knowing that the Eibishter runs the world, and the Eibishter Zanu Mufanas Hasaku, he looks after everybody, and he also is Sivas HaSibais. This is Zicher and Batuach, that he's not going to leave you. The other night a young man called me and he says he's going to the Rebbe, and he wants me to organize him a place where to stay. Baruch Hashem, I was matzliach to do so. I managed to do it. I got him a place where to stay in Crown Heights, a nice place. But he said to me, I found this one, I found that one, so I said, listen. I said, you're going to the Rebbe, the Eibishter is for sure not going to leave you on the street. You're for sure something's going to work out. Oh no, that's right. Maybe I should put up my journal until I know for sure where I'm going to be staying. So I said, no, you must just go. And this is, if you're going to the Rebbe, the Eibishter will find you a place. You won't remain in the street, chasver. So the Eibishter, that I happened to be the Ilah, the Siva, that I found him a place below. I remember one year I went to the, I didn't know where I was going to stay. I just went for Tisha. Anyway, how I managed up, where I finally ended up is another story. But anyway, those are the material. So, there's certain points in life where you just rely legami on Sivas HaSibas. Now, Ad Krika, it's put down in a letter from the Friedrich Rebbe, and it's also, I think, in one of the Friedrich Rebbeim, I think there's a similar point in one of their letters, where they say that there's some points where you're faced with a difficult situation, and normally what you would want to do is pray. So you shouldn't even pray. You shouldn't even say anything. You shouldn't do anything. You shouldn't even say Tehillim to get. You can say Tehillim, isn't it right? But not to get you out of that situation. And you should just entirely rely on Hashem. Just say. You shouldn't say it b'dibur. You shouldn't bring it out in words. You just say in your heart, Eibishter, here I am. You look after me, and you are. I'm putting my complete trust in you, and that's what the Friedrich Rebbe means. That there's some moments in life where that is the avodah. That there's nothing to do, only just completely and utterly to turn your heart to Hashem, and boom.
How do you know when?
F?
How do you know when?
Oh, how do you know when? That's a good question. How do you know when it's one of those moments? Well, I would wish that you'd never been in any moments of that nature, B'klal. So the Mashiach is coming, so we're not going to know that type of a weight anymore. The only bitochen we're going to have is that David will give Gilui Atzmos, not just the Hakol Be'atzmos. So I see my jokes don't get appreciated anymore. But anyway, that will be what we trust in the Eibush. He won't leave us without all the tremendous Giluim when Mashiach comes. Al Chaponim, that's one Nakuda. And that's an amazing lesson that there are different types of bitochen, and different moments and different periods in life. But Vayeishev Kislev was azar that he should have remained just completely and utterly out of it. And the Friedrich ever writes over there, because we see that Yosef HaTzadik had the power for that. He was completely moved on the Olamah. He was able later on to be in charge of the whole Mitzrayim and running the whole Mitzrayim and the whole thing, and nonetheless he remained Yosef HaTzadik. And that's where it's brought down that when the Shvatim in the coming parasha, when they come into Mitzrayim and they meet up with Yosef, it's written that he recognized them, but they didn't recognize. They didn't recognize him. Why didn't they recognize him? So Rashi says because he had a beard by that time. When they left him, he didn't have a beard. So I mean that's Adova HaMistaber. Because the other night there was a rabbi here that he used to live in my building when he was a young boy. When he used to live in my building, there was a rabbi. He'd come over here, I put him over here on the table. So when I saw him last, he had a black beard. Now he's got a white beard, and it took me a few minutes to work out who he was. I'll be quite frank. I knew him, but I didn't quite, I didn't quite figure who he was. And only when he began speaking, then his voice was what really clicked. But however, Rashi says that he didn't have a beard when he parted from them, and now he had a beard, therefore they didn't recognize him. So Siddur says that they didn't recognize Yosef B'klal, right way back from the beginning. And that's what they brought. They brought all sorts of strange reports to Yaakov about Yosef, that his whole avodah was something they didn't understand. And they felt that to be shaykh to divinity and to be clothed to Elokus, you had to be away from the world. You had to be separate. And Yosef was able to be in the world and be a merkava to Pnimius Ak. He stayed in Siddur, not Stam Malchus Ak, no Pnimius Ak. That Yosef HaTzadik was mamish a merkava Elokus Kipshutei, and he was able, therefore Yosef everywhere he was, he wasn't. And over the Friedrich says that tzaddikim daimim l'boirom, that Yosef was mamish like the Eibishter, that the Eibishter is in the world but he's not, that the world is not the Eibishter. The Eibishter is there but he's not. And he said Yosef HaTzadik was exactly like that. He was there but he wasn't. He said therefore a person like that who's there but he's not there, he doesn't need to there B'klal. He's more not there than he's there. And he brings the famous story with the Baal Shem Tov. Right from the mountain. Well, you're not supposed to know which mice. That the Baal Shem Tov, it's well known that on Friday nights he had tremendous problems answering people. People would speak to him and he couldn't answer them. And the reason being that he was too much Lamaila and not enough Lamati. He was too much Lamaila and Elokus, therefore he couldn't answer people. And that bothered him because he wanted always to answer people and help them no matter when it was, even if it was Shabbos Kodesh. Baal Shem Tov saw that as his task in the world was to help other people. And therefore he prayed all sorts of prayers that Hashem should allow him still be Lamaila, but give him the opportunity and the ability to answer people and speak with them. And the Friedrich brings in the Maimon, he brings the story of the Baal Shem Tov, and he said that was Yosef HaTzadik's madrega the whole time. He was like that the whole time. He was not there, but he was. And if a person like that, he didn't need anything B'klal. He didn't need B'klal, any sort of a siva, a ila, and a olo. Yosef HaTzadik didn't need anything. Shom dova. And he said that's why it's considered by Yosef how they call a pagan. It's like a stain, because Yosef HaTzadik didn't B'klal have any shaykhs B'klal. What was the Friedrich of his name, by the way? Yosef. That just happens to be the case. That's going to get to that Indian. Now we move over to this next Indian, and that is that this whole Indian that he didn't remember him and he forgot him. We should do this. So Rashi makes it, tell him he has to come into the class. I saw him walking around out there. No? This if he doesn't, it won't be good. I just saw him walking up the passageway. Anyway, let's forget it.
Should I go down?
No. That he didn't remember and he forgot. So comes along the Zohar HaKodesh, and the Zohar HaKodesh in Parsha Miketz, right at the beginning, similar to the Medrash. It deals with a point put again to the end of this Parsha, at the beginning of next week's Parsha. And the Zohar HaKodesh says that if the Sarah Mashkim didn't remember Yosef, then that means he forgot him. What's the difference between the two? Zok the Zohar HaKodesh like that Yosef HaTzaddik, he literally had a mistake, Yosef HaTzaddik. What was his mistake? He thought that the dream that the Sarah Mashkim had was a high madrega in Ruchnins. And Yosef was a big understander of dreams. He's called a poiser haloimos. He's able to interpret dreams. And the word poiser has got the same oisius as the word tofer, to sow. In other words, Yosef was able to sow the highest madregas into the lowest, sow them all up into one beged, or whatever you like to call it. So Yosef HaTzaddik, he thought that this cholem that the Sarah Mashkim had was a very high madrega, and therefore he felt that this Sarah Mashkim, since he dreamed such a cholem, he would be a medium of remembering. Now, what is the union of the Sarah Mashkim? Wine, yayin. And he's pouring wine into the king's cup, and the whole thing. Wine is a very high madrega. Wine's indicator even of bina, the nochazov inyanim, and the kos is malchut, and the kos of pare is also indicator of malchut. Pare is also a madrega in kedusha, kiyadua, brought down in Torah earth. Therefore, Vayeishev Kislev saw that this Sarah Mashkim had dreamed a very special dream, and he thought that he was what you call it, the power of remembrance, and he felt that maybe he could use that power of remembrance in the union of Kedusha. And therefore, Vayeishev Kislev said to him, you must remember, and he doubled it up. He said, Chaltani v'his Chaltani, emphasizing to him very much this union of remembrance. However, we see that it did not work, and the Sarah Mashkim completely forgot him. In other words, according to the Zohar Kodesh, it's two inyanim, that he really belonged in the clippers. So in the clippers there are two madregas. There's what's called masculine and feminine. Masculine remains to remember. In the clippers there's a certain vague remembrance of after that it's all complete for forgetfulness. So he says, Lo zocha. He not only did he not have that vague power of remembrance that the clippers have, he didn't even have anything, and he was only purely forgetfulness. Shichachah. Purely forgetfulness. Says, so it brings along the Meforshim in the Zohar Kodesh, and they say, what does it mean you remember? What is it a pshat that a mensch is able to walk around remembering things? Isn't it, Yossi, but it would be Kedai, you remember certain little things that have often been said, and maybe you could sit up straight and not have you stretching out your legs with the whole mouse. According to the Kislev Arizal, you shouldn't hold your fingers like that. Anyway, comes again the Meforshim over there, and they say, B'Klau, do you remember? You just hear all this information without end. How is it that you remember things? How do you store it all away inside that little entity called your brain? Oh, you see, you're so brilliant that you got two people laughing at you. Amen. How do you do that? So come to again Chassidus. Chassidus says that Zikaron is connected with Moyach HaChochma. And therefore we notice that when you put on Tefillin, the first parsha in the Tefillin, how do you call it? Zocheres, how's it called, the first parsha? Yeah. That you put in the Tefillin, it's written in that, the pasuk is, has it written there, Zocheres Ayem Asher B'Tasum Mitzrayim Kol Yimei Chayecha. That you must remember. So it's written, the word remembering, and that's Keneged Dinim for Chochmah. However, that's only just that you remember things in a way that if ever anybody really pushed you, you'd be able to bring it back into your mind and repeat it out. And that's because Chochmah is bittul. If you're not a whole yesh and you're really devoted to the truth, then your mind stores things. But if you're a yesh and you really hold from yourself, then you forget things. As they state in the great Sforim. In other words, what causes you to forget things is that you're a big yesh and you think you understand better than those who are older than you, or those who are teaching you, or those that you could chas v'sholem even think you know better than people who are really important. And therefore, what brings to not remembering is yeshes, the heipach of Chochmah. However, there's another inyan in remembering, and that is that certain things are always in front of your eyes. You never forget it. And that's how you're supposed to be with the fact that Hashem fills up the whole world, and that Hashem is continuously running our lives. That has to be in our minds and in front of us the whole time. They're kilu roya, just like you see. So it's written, instead of what does that, is moyacha das. In other words, if you're mukusha and you're bound up, das is even if kashrus, if you're bound up and you're involved and you're in it the whole time, then it'll always be in front of your eyes, and it'll be like as if you're seeing it, mamish, in front of you, a day after a day, a minute, hour after hour, and even minute after minute. In other words, that there'll be what's called devekas, cleavage to Hashem, that you'll be close to good thing. Oh, that's a moyach hadas. So it's put down in the Zohar Kodesh and the Meforshim that to remember the power of Zikaron is Chochmah, but the more massive power of Zikaron, to always be in a thing, that's Das. Chochmah and Das together, they make up what's called Zikaron. They remember. So the whole inyan from Kedusha is remembrance. Therefore, it's written in all sorts of places in the Torah, remember. And every day, when you put on your Rebbein Tamsford, you say 6 remembrances. Sheish Zechires. I don't know if you guys ever get around to saying them. You probably say we so that many things, we get lost, we don't know what we're saying. But there is such a thing as a Sheish Zechires, that there's at least 6 times where the Torah urges us to remember major issues and major things, and it's full, the Torah, of remembering. Because the inyan of remembrance, well, that is the ikar inyan of Kedusha. However, the inyan for forgetting, well, that's heipach inyan of Kedusha. Heipach inyan of Kedusha. And just not remembering is also a beginning of the heipach of Kedusha. And the Rebbe in Samavov, in the famous Hemshech, Samavov, in the first Hemshech for Shavuos, in Samavov, he's got a whole beer. What does it mean that the Sara Mashkim lo yizocha v'yishkoch chayu? That the Sara Mashkim is the Koyach HaKlippos, and the Koyach HaKlippos persuade you that you should be in a Zahavefa for lo yizocha and yishkoch chayu. Rachmanin Islan, you should forget. So he says, lo yizocha, well, that means that even though you learned the thing, and even though it's true, and even though you should have a koch in it, you should be enthusiastic, and you should be running around full of enthusiasm and chayas and all sorts of good sachen. And the fact that you're not, that's because you're not remembering, you're just not reminding yourself and chazering over all the good things that you learn. It could be you learned, it could be even your quite brilliant, you're quite gifted, but you're just not in it, you're a bit not in it. Since you're a bit not in it, you're a bit out of it. But it's still, how do you call it, possible to give you a bit of a stop, and you'll be back in it. However, Ishkochehu is much worse. Ishkochehu means that you've fallen deep into a situation where there's a dover which is causing you to be forgetting. And therefore the Rebbe Rashab over there says a very amazing shot. And he says, we have to say that that's two different states. Because if they would mamish just the development, further development one of the other, then it could have been written he really didn't, or something like that. But the fact that the Torah said Loi Zocha Vayeishev is the simon that Vayeishev is another state all in its own right, where another factor, as it were, is working. Loi Zocha means that you are just not using your koyach as a korin the way you should. Yishkochehu means something else is causing you to forget. And mamish pili ploys, I looked up in the safe which I bought with the Pirushim and the Zohar Kodesh, and some of the Meforshim over there say that Vayishkochehu is killed, was written Vayishachachehu, he caused him to forget. Somebody caused him to forget. In other words, if you just don't remember, then you fall into a relative forgetful. But to be mamish in a state of v'yishkochehu mamish, that's only if something interferes and causes you to forget. And he says over there that the pirush haposhet in the pasuk is better that way than other pirushim. As they state, taught in some of that it makes the pasuk better. Just in case we don't. Remember, something is working on a person if he falls from just not remembering into forgetting. He falls into forgetfulness. So says the Rebbe Rashab over there, what causes you to fall into forgetfulness? That your mom is in a state of Ishkochehu. He says that you make the inyonim of this world into a Matthias. Instead of seeing the inyonim of the world as just a medium for serving Hashem and a medium for carrying out the rotzim of the Eibishter, and therefore we need certain things, don't we, Uncle Michael? Yeah. We need certain inyonim that help us along, and through that we can carry out the will of the Eibishter, and certain things that we're meant to put an emphasis on and to have a care and a value for. But if you take the Dvarim Gashmiyim and you make them a Matthias Be'atzmo, that they themselves have their own value, what is their value? That you should get all the tainug and all the benefit and all the gishmak from Inyona Elam Hazeh as much as you can possibly pack in. In other words, that you want all the Inyonim Gashmiyim should serve your koyach atainu. How do you call it? Your gishmak. So you say, me? Oh, I'm not like that. So the Rebbe Rashab went out in the middle of Samuvov to say that unfortunately it could be that you are, and it could be that you don't even notice it, but you're really chasing after the world as a Metzias, and you're using it to fill up your koyach. And that is the union of Shichacho. That's what it means. And then there's another Maisa, Vayishko Chayu. And this is the Rebbe Rashab. You can be even in bold. In Yiddishkeit, he said, Yochel Liyeshem Mekayim Teiro Mitzvahs, Avo Einu Petoich. He's not really in it, but the whole brain of himself, he's not in it. Is it? And therefore he can say, well, Eino Chanami. The Torah says, and the Eibishter says, and the Rebbe says, and the Rosh Yeshiva says, and somebody else says, oh, Eino Chanami. That's what they say. As they say in Yiddish, Rachman in Islam, Oter gesagt. So he said. And that's a inyan von Ishkochehu, Rachman in Islam. That means you've forgotten. And It's not the taisha to just become oish Torah and mitzvahs, but your Torah and mitzvahs become, how do you call it? They're in a state of forgetfulness, even though you do that. And that's due to the fact that you are devoted to the Sara Mashkim. You ever heard of the Sara Mashkim in Chassidus? That the Sara Mashkim, he's the balabas over the what do you call it, the pipeline, what do you call it, your throat pipe, what is it, that lets down all the food and all the drink. And the amazing thing is, as Bord says, that the ikar power of the taiva of achila is davke shtio. Through drinking, you get dragged into more taivas and more. I state. And over the Sara Mashkim, he's tanuge achila, and that leads to tanuge elam hazeh, mami. So we got to be very careful. Nobody pays any attention to what we say around here, but you've got to be careful not to drink. And this time mashki and things of that nature were not given in order that we should pack them in because we want to drink. Mizok l'chaim v'sev. Gamzeh. Must speak the die of to drink becomes how do you call it, a rachman and a siva, an opening of the door of a fall into taivas, rachman and tanugim and all sorts of other inyanim, and that brings you to einim for nishkochehu. You become a man of the Sara Mashkim. Not only he doesn't remember, not only he's not fakoch, but he's even doing everything like a robo. He does it. And he might even, well, let's not get to, how do you call it, to the point. In effect, Sara Mashkim, two states, according to the Zohar Kodesh, Lo Yizochar Vayishkoch V'chehu Rachmani Nitlan. Avamer Lefise, the Rebbe Rashab's pshat is that there's a dover which is making you forget. There's a koyach which, what Lefise Einochanami, not to remember is also to forget. But there's a worse thing is there's something that makes you forget. It works on you that you mamish forget, and that's called Shichako Be'etzim, Hashem Yishmor. Yeah, the Eves is always sitting. Now it becomes clear. Well, at least, I don't know to how many individuals it becomes clear. But now it does become clear what we say in Chanukah, and what we say in the Al Nisim, and what we say in the, how do you call it, Aner Salolu, and all the places we say, that what was the whole point of the Yevonim? What were they looking for? That they stood up against the Yidden, Kedei lahashkichon Torah, to make him forget the Torah, ulahavirom michukei retei, to take him away from the chukim. And the Rebbe says in a Maimah that all the mitzvahs are chukim. All the mitzvahs have to be done like chukim. All of them are chukim. And what do the Yevonim want to do? They want to make you forget the Torah. So the Friedrich Rebbe says clearly in many of his Maimah, they didn't want to stop you keeping Torah at, have you absolutely become just all friar, no more Torah by Yidden. No, they wanted to make the Torah into what's called a tarbut. They wanted to make culture out of the Torah. Jewish tradition, Jewish culture, Jewish this. They were quite happy with that, the Yevonim. The Jews will teach us, the Yevonim were very scientific and they liked ideas with the whole sort of schmonzes, with the whole arena. They were very much into such things, the Yevonim. And therefore they said, have a Jewish culture, have a Jewish Torah, teach you all sorts of nice things, but don't be involved in the divine aspect of it. Leave the divinity out of it. Just make it a nice culture. Everybody be very happy with the Jews. They let the world free instead of holding the world in this strange straitjacket that you got to be devoted to Hashem. You got to discipline yourself and everything. You can study Torah, but don't be too Verfrummt. Don't be verfrummt. You know what verfrummt means? You take the Shulchan Aruch too seriously. You're trying all the time to be the way it should be. That's what they say they are. And therefore, what do? They make you forget the Torah. Not that you forget there's such a thing as the Torah, but you're in this state called shichacho. You don't remember what is really going on. Why? Because something has made you forget it. And therefore the Frierdiker says in one of his Marim, when they come along to be upon him and they say, oh, what is so terrible about having a good time? What's wrong with you, man? We also are scientists, and we're people that we think tremendously high, and we've written all sorts of philosophical treatises, and we're blowing the world with science and with philosophy and with alle gute Sachen. Wir sind ein gewaltiger Menschen, as Yavonim, as Greeks. What's wrong with having a good time at the same time? Why do you have to be disciplined and all this other crazy business? Well, that's called lahashkicham Torah. And that is what's called Hellenism. Hellenism is forgetting about the Torah. Not forgetting about it, but just forgetting. I'm in another world. I'll sit down and learn a bit of Torah with you, but I'm in another world. I'm in my world. Let me do my bit in the world, and let me have my own life. That's called lahashkicham Torah. So, if you fall into that, then you just automatically don't do the mitzvahs anymore with a brand, with chayes. Yeah, you do them because that's what people do. A mitzvah, my case, put on tefillin, kosher tefillin, that's what the Yevonim are after. The whole meaning for Chanukah is Dafki the beetle of the Sarah Hamashk. And it goes back to the other factor that Rashi brought out, and that is that you've got to trust in the Chashmonaim. They didn't see any way that they could possibly win. It was just not shy. Because in those days they had secret weapons. You know what the secret weapon was? Elephants. They had these huge elephants that they fought war with, and that was mamish a big tzara. People never seen that before. They'd never seen elephants coming into war and trampling people and people. It was a huge, big thing. A lot of people got trampled and killed and everything with these elephants. It needed tremendous bitochen on the part of the Chashmonaim, and it was almost impossible that they should win. I mean, it was. And therefore it's written, Biad Mahatim, and all the amazing things that we say in the Alanism, it couldn't work, and yet it did. In other words, that's the bitochen of Vayeishev Kislev. And therefore we always read the story about Vayeishev Kislev, always around about Chag. Isn't that mystifying? What's it got to do with it? Vayeishev Kislev bitochen. What he should have had bitochen, he dropped a little bit, according to Rashi and the Rabbeinu B'chayei. He dropped a little bit from his real bitochen. Or that would teach, that's what the Chashmonaim, they picked up, and they said, we're not going to drop from that betochen. We're going to go with betochen gomo. L'mayla mikol einyonim Hashem hu sibas ha-sibay. The Eibush is the cause of all the causes. They had this unbelievable nitochen, this unbelievable victory, completely l'mayla mikol madida v'akbala l'mayla mikol hateva. And that's the answer. If you go with the tmimas, and you go with what looks to be not a normal thing, it looks to be too verfrummt, it looks to be not the right way to go, and who knows where you're going to end up with. You have to know that on the contrary, the Eibush, the Dafkin as our Eifen, will help you and elevate you, and you'll be able to achieve things in life and have things also b'derech hateva. Also what you need b'derech hateva you'll also have. And that's what you come to, Tomchei Tmimim and to Er Tmimim. You come in order to gain that message and to spend a few of your life, a few months or years or whatever it is of your life completely and utterly devoted to the Sibas Ha-Sibas, not to Ilas Ha-Ilas. And then will Zicha, the Eibush to help, when you do move back a little bit into the world of B'uti Shum Sofi, the Eibush will continue to help you also in that way. And you'll have Bracha V'Atzlocha, Shum Sofi. But the main thing is you'll be Neiris Ha, Lola, you yourself will be a Neir to light up the the world and to light up the street and to light up the shops and to light up all the other places, you yourself will be a living Ne'er, because you'll be going in that way. And that's the lesson and the connection of Vayeishev HaTzadik in this particular parsha, in the parsha Habor, with the union of the Neres Chanukah. So it should be B'yomim Ha'ein Bisman HaZeh. Whatever happened in those days should come into these days. B'yomim Ha'ein Bisman HaZeh. And we should light the menorah, not just how to call the Chanukah menorah. We should light the emes of menorah in the Beis Hamikdash. Take him miyad mamish, v'simcha gedola, v'simchas oilam. Thing to say they did in those days, and we'll say to the Vayeishev Ato Barach Melcha Horabim. How do we say it? The Dantes Dineinu. He did everything for us, and take him miyad mamish. We'll be together with the Rebbe in the Beis Hamikdash Shlishi, and with the emes of menorah, mit all gute Sachen, oid, lifnei Shabbos, Vayeishev, and kal v'chayma, on Shabbos, and menucha l'chayei v'yomim.